Poison is also a defense mechanism in plants, and we can't really neglect this. And when we consider it and its kind of biological role, we see that it's used in keeping things at bay, predators and invaders. And using essences made from poisonous plants can also bolster our own psychic, social, and energetic defenses very similarly. And that's really helpful for anyone who might identify as being highly sensitive or empathic, or just overwhelmed by what's happening in the world at large. And finally, poison plants grow in liminal spaces. They're often on the threshold of the, we'll say, developed and undeveloped. We find them in ditches and dusty roadsides and, at the kind of cusp of the wild places. And because they kind of represent the in-between space, they're going to help us travel into the in-between spaces in a psychic or spiritual kind of way. We might use them for dream time enhancement, for shamanic or spiritual journeying, for any kind of creative visualization, anything that we're using to kind of cross the threshold between ordinary and non-ordinary consciousness. And of course, those that are psychoactive, there are indigenous traditions that use them in this way biologically, but the beautiful thing about working with the flower essences is they work vibrationally to kind of lead us in that direction, to give us the ability to choose entering that state of consciousness. So that's kind of baneful essences at large. I'd like to just very briefly highlight the two baneful remedies that Bach used, and we're going to maybe see a pattern emerge here. So we've got Clematis vitalba, better known as clematis, and then star-of-Bethlehem or Ornithogalum umbulatum, and we've got those on top and bottom accordingly. Clematis, the traditional indications are being kind of daydreamy, being lost in the future, being distant or ungrounded. It's got the ability to kind of call us back into the body, to bring us back into the present moment. We might use it to counteract absent-mindedness and boredom and flights of fantasy. And it belongs to the buttercup family alongside some really intensely toxic plants. And then with star-of-Bethlehem, we've got a member of the asparagus family, and we'll meet another member of this family a little later as well. This is the classic remedy for shock and trauma. Any kind of loss of willpower or temporary loss of strength that comes from receiving a tense, traumatic, upsetting situation, any kind of accident or crisis. This is the kind of underpinning of rescue remedy or the 5-flower formula. In fact, both of these remedies are used together in this very classic combination of flower essences. And one of our big takeaways is that when we look at the most intensely poisonous plants in Bach's system, we see that they're the ones that have the most immediate effect. And one of the benefits to using baneful flower essences is that they do have a really swift and intense effect. Anyone who's maybe a little bit more psychically sensitive might want to be mindful of dosage with the more poisonous plants that we'll cover. But just generally speaking, a little will go a long way. And when we look at the effects of these two and the categories to which Bach introduced them, we've got clematis and the insufficient interest in the present moment. We've got star-of-Bethlehem in the category of essences for despondency or despair. And we see both of those being remedied by coming very deeply into the present moment and maybe sifting through the baggage that's kind of keeping us from experiencing the present moment more fully. So keeping those things in mind, I've chosen five baneful remedies that we can look at in modern flower essence therapy and kind of learn a little bit about each of them and take a few cues from their plant gestures or their doctrine of signatures. So we're going to start with a very famous one, Atropa Belladonna, or deadly nightshade. We've got these kind of brownish purple tinged blossoms that kind of droop. They give way to this beautiful black shiny fruit, very, very glossy. One of the folk names, of course, is Belladonna, which comes from the Italian meaning beautiful woman, because it was once used in cosmetics to dilate the pupils, which was a sign of beauty in the era. And as a flower essence, we might use it for things like poor self-image, feeling unworthy of love and beauty, the inability to see your own worth. Also, it's used for any kind of repeating karma or self-fulfilling prophecies. We might use it for intense emotional pain and depression. And it is, of course, a member of the nightshade family, the Solanaceae. And I really enjoy working with this because it is one of those kind of classic witching herbs, those things we see in the grimoire traditions of medieval and early modern Europe as being a plant associated with magic and witchcraft and things. And so it's a very polarizing kind of plant, but at the same time, it's been used in medicine for quite a long time, not just traditional medicine, but had a big heyday in the Renaissance and medieval and early modern periods. So it's a really potent plant ally. And when we take a look at this plant and we work with its essence, we see that we've got this relationship to Venus. And that's something we find in a lot of nightshades, but also a lot of baneful plants, this kind of Venusian quality. If we watch the pattern that Venus takes in the night sky, its transit over many years, it makes this kind of fivefold pattern that resembles a flower. And we have that same kind of fivefold symmetry apparent in Belladonna and most other nightshades. And that kind of signals a kind of link between the two. And Venus in folklore is interesting because these days we like to reduce her to being the goddess of love and beauty, but more than that, she's also the goddess of secret knowledge. She's the goddess of war. She's the goddess of passion. And we know that those passions can fuel both constructive and destructive things. So with Belladonna, we've got the ability to build up our self-worth, but also to break down the cycles, the patterns, the beliefs and behaviors that have gotten us maybe stuck in the cycle of a self-fulfilling prophecy. One of my flower essence instructors, Christopher Penzak, also likes to use this for clearing out the sort of karmic gunk that gets stuck in the spinal column, psychically speaking. So if we have trauma that we have stored in the body, particularly trauma that we've seen amassed through inherited patterns or maybe across the journey of reincarnation from lifetime to lifetime, Belladonna is really useful for eliminating that. And one of the clues is found in its botanical name. So Atropa, the genus name, is from one of the Greek fates, one of the three kind of ancient goddesses who were responsible for the thread of life and weaving the tapestry of all existence. And Atropos is the one who cuts the thread of fate and therefore determines how long we live by how long that thread is. Poetically, we might also view this as the karmic act of cutting cords and breaking cycles. So it's a really valuable ally for any kind of cord cutting. That really intense toxicity the plant has is really good for cutting through some of our heaviest stuff. And as a flower essence, it's also really deeply protective. Since the plant is well defended by its poisons, it can offer the same kind of defense to us, psychically speaking. The next baneful remedy that I want to talk about is Lily of the Valley, or Convallaria majalis. It's got a lot of really cute folk names that kind of relate to its connection to fairies and nature spirits. It's often called fairies' bells. And it is a member of the asparagus family. It was once classified in the lily family, which has been subdivided into lots of other groups these days.